few years ago, I worked as a cashier at one of the major convenience stores here in Hong Kong. The store was open 24 hours a day, and I usually worked the night shift. The story I'm about to share with you took place during Ghost Month, which happens in July. For those of you who are not familiar, Ghost Month is a deeply rooted tradition across many parts of Asia. It's believed that during this month, the gates of the underworld open up, allowing the spirits of the deceased to wander freely in the world of the living. It's a time filled with respect and a little fear. And on one particular night, I experienced something I'll never forget. That night, I was working with my usual coworker, Sally. It was just the two of us. Our shift started at around 10 p.m. and it ran until 8 a.m. the next morning. A schedule that I was already very familiar with. In fact, I had worked so many nights with Sally that we both preferred the night shifts because it was usually quieter, slower, and honestly, it just suited us. Most nights, the store stayed pretty empty. Once in a while, a few late-night guests would wander in for snacks or cigarettes. But for the most part, it was so quiet that Sally and I would sometimes take turns napping in the back room while the others stayed up to man the register. It wasn't a bad setup. The slow hours gave me time to read, catch up on books, or just work on little personal side projects while the city slept around us. It was peaceful. At least it usually was. A little while later, on this night, a young woman came into the store. I glanced up from my book and out of habit, I said, "Welcome." She looked like she was probably in her early 20s. She was dressed pretty normally, nothing that really stood out. She wore a simple white blouse and a pair of khaki pants, like a young professional. I figured she probably stayed out late for a work function or something like that, and is probably coming in for some water or juice. She didn't say anything back as I said, "Welcome." She just quietly made her way toward the back of the store over to the fridges where we kept the cold drinks. I didn't think much of it. I just shrugged it off and went back to reading my book. But I could hear her pacing lightly in the back for a few minutes. It sounded like she was just trying to decide what she wanted to buy. Maybe a late night soda or tea. Nothing unusual. But then without buying anything, she just simply walked back out of the store again, silent. She didn't say anything at all. I just brushed it off again. She probably changed her mind about getting anything and went back to my routine. About half an hour later, though, she came back in. Same young woman, same slow, quiet walk through the door. I greeted her again. "Welcome." Still no response. And just like before, she drifted toward the back of the store, back to the refrigerators. She moved almost exactly the same way, wandering near the cold drinks. I was looking at her now, and I noticed something strange. She wasn't really looking at anything. It was more like she was just standing there waiting for someone or something. Just to make sure everything was all right, I put my book down, stood up, and walked to the back of the store where she was still quietly lingering near the fridges. I approached her and asked her politely, "Is there anything I could help you with? Or if there's anything I could help you find tonight, please let me know." I also told her that I noticed she came by earlier, so I figured she was probably looking for something specific. She didn't react right away. For a few seconds, she just stood there almost like she didn't hear me. And then she finally looked up and smiled at me shyly and said, "Oh, sorry, I'm actually not trying to purchase anything tonight. Honestly, I'm just here because I'm waiting for my boyfriend. He's across the street right now playing video games at the internet cafe. He doesn't know that I'm waiting for him, so I've just been roaming around, killing time. I hope that's okay if I stay here for a bit." I appreciated her honesty, so I smiled back and I said, "Oh sure, that's no problem at all. It's dark out. It's probably safer for you to just wait inside anyway. Take your time." So she nodded and lingered back by the shelves near the fridge, Saint standing there quietly as she waited. Since we had someone else in the store now, I didn't feel right just sitting down and reading my book again. It would look bad if a customer saw me slacking off. So I decided to find something work-related to do. I slipped into the back room and started unpacking some boxes. Just new stock of drinks and snacks and few other items. Just getting everything ready for the day shift workers who would come the next morning. Sally was still sleeping in the break room, curled up pretty peacefully, and I didn't want to wake her. So I moved as quietly as I could as I was unpacking boxes. Just slowly, one by one. The store was so quiet, you could hear the rustle of the packaging and the low hum with the refrigerators. But those were pretty much the only sounds in the whole store that night. I wrapped up in about 40 minutes or so. No other customers had come in during that night. And the store stayed pretty eerily quiet. I headed back up to the front by the seat, by the register, and the girl was still there. She was still standing in the same spot near the fridges. She was still waiting, standing super still, just like before. And it doesn't look like she moved at all, since neither of us seemed like we had much going on. And it was getting close to 4 a.m. at this point. I figured I might as well try and make some small talk with this girl. As I was chatting with her, Sally woke up. She stretched, yawned, and then wandered out toward the front. She also spotted this girl and gave her a friendly hello. And then she tapped me lightly on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I'm heading out to grab our food." We usually ordered from the same late night restaurant every night. So Sally already knew my usual order. It was routine for us. And tonight it was her turn to pick up the food. So I nodded, and Sally headed out into the dark street, leaving me alone in the store with this quiet girl. The girl and I ended up chatting for over an hour. Honestly, just about regular things, her life, a little bit my life, and it was actually really easy to talk to her. We were around the same age. I think she was in her 20s, as was I, and it just felt comfortable, casual. She told me she worked at a clothing store not too far from here, and I smiled, and I said, "Oh, I'll look for you one day. We should hang out sometime." But then, that's when she looked down at her feet and just quietly said, "Oh, you won't find me." I just stood there for a little bit, and I blinked because it was such a strange response. Why wouldn't I be able to find her? Before I could ask more about that, she shifted the conversation and started talking about her boyfriend, pretty much saying that he wasn't always the best boyfriend. And she mentioned almost casually that sometimes he would hit her, and once he dragged her up to the roof of their building. I was pretty shocked and concerned. I leaned in and asked, what happened when he dragged you up there? She continued looking at the ground the whole time, as she was talking, and she just stayed quiet for a few long seconds, her eyes wandering off somewhere far away, and then she just said, "Oh, nothing happened. He's more scared than me now." The way she said that phrase just sent a strange chill through me. I didn't know what to make of it or what it even meant, so I just smiled politely and nodded. Something about her answers always felt off, like she was holding something back, like there was more she wasn't telling me. I didn't want to push her. Sally returned with her food. As she walked in the door, she saw the girl still, and she gave a little laugh and said to the girl, "Oh wow, you're still here, huh? Just joking around." The girl smiled back politely, and Sally just headed straight to the back with our takeout bags with our food in it. Around this time, the newspaper deliveries were starting to arrive. They're always right on schedule. Since I usually work the night shift, I've gotten pretty familiar with most of these delivery guys. I never knew their names, but they usually just drop off the newspapers and left. But we always exchanged friendly hello and by sometimes a little banter thrown in there. And tonight was no different. One of the regulars pulled up, hopped out of his van, and carried the bound stacks of newspapers and magazines to the front of the store like he always does. As he sat them down, he grinned at me and joked, "Hey you, what are you doing just standing here tonight? Have a seat or do something productive. You slacker. Don't just stand there alone doing nothing." He laughed, and then he jogged back to his van. He waved from the driver's seat and then drove off to continue his route. I just stood there. I was pretty confused because I hadn't been standing here, doing nothing by myself. I'm standing here, clearly chatting with this girl in the store. That's when Sally calls from the back saying, "Hey, our food's ready. Come and get it." I turned around toward her and I responded, "Okay, I'll be right there." But when I turned back around toward the girl, she was gone. There's nobody in front of me or in back of me or anywhere in the store. There's no sound of the door opening or footsteps. No goodbye, no nothing. It was so strange. We had just spent over an hour talking, and it was nice conversation. So why would she just suddenly leave without saying anything, without even giving me her name? I did not hear the door chime or even footsteps. So how could she just...
Without even giving me her name? I did not hear the door chime or even footsteps. So how could she just have slipped away so quietly like that? So I rushed outside and I scanned up and down the streets in all directions. It was totally empty. There was nobody there. No one on sidewalks. No one across the street. No one in any of the nearby shops that were all closed. The streets were just totally empty and still. It was almost like she just vanished. I went back into the shop and told Sally what just happened. So she's listening to me as she's unpacking our lunch from the takeout bags. She looked as confused as I was, especially after I mentioned what the newspaper delivery man said. We both agreed something wasn't adding up, so we decided to check the security footage from that night. We rewound the tape all the way back to the first time that this girl should have showed up into the store for the first time. We watched the monitor. Suddenly, closely, but there was nothing. No sign of her. No one entered the store. No one walked past the register to the back to where the fridges are. All you can see is just me looking up from my book saying welcome, and then going back to reading. So then we fast forward the tape to when this girl came into the store the second time, and there was still nothing. Well, all you can see is me getting up from my chair, walking toward the back of the store, and just talking to myself. There was nobody there. The footage became more and more horrifying as we watched. I was just standing there chatting and laughing for over an hour by myself. And then we got to the part where the delivery man showed up, and just like I remembered, he dropped off the stack of papers and then looked up towards me and saw me alone standing there by myself. So no wonder he choked the way he did, because from his eyes and from the camera to no one. That's when my blood ran cold, because this can't be real. Sally saw this girl too, clear as day. But yet on the security footage, she was never there. I started thinking, did I imagine everything? Had it been such a long and exhausting night that my mind created an imaginary friend for me to talk to for over an hour? No, it can't be it, because Sally had spoken to her too. Once when she left to pick up the food, and once again when she returned, we both saw her. So, if that's true, then who was this girl that I spent the past hour talking to? As I sat there trying to make sense of it, another memory crept up in my mind. A few months earlier, not too far from the store, maybe like a 5-minute walk, I had seen a couple fighting on the street one late afternoon. It was a loud and ugly scene. A whole crowd gathered to watch. It was a boyfriend and a girlfriend. The boyfriend was causing commotion by kicking over trash bins and just screaming at this girl at the top of his lungs. The girl just stood there quiet and just stared at the ground while he kept screaming at her. A few days later, I saw a news report that a girl had been murdered. She was dragged to the roof of her building and then thrown over by her boyfriend right in the same neighborhood a few minutes from the store. So I couldn't help but wonder if that couple that I saw that afternoon were the same couple in the news article that I saw. And more terrifying, is the girl I spoke to at the store the same girl from that news article? Had everything somehow lined up that night so that our paths crossed one last time? Even now, I still can't explain what happened. All I know is that I'll never forget that night or that girl.